Wild tea. Why it's important and why it's special. Hi, my name is Sergey, I'm the founder of Moychay, and today we'll talk about wild tea. Wilderness is measured in many different parameters. I will break them all down to you, but let me first start from the origin. Actually, tea came from the wild. And as we know, tea is not a bush, like we know, small tea bush plantations, it's a tree. Tea tree came from the region, very specific region, it's a south of China, Yunnan province, and bordered provinces like Guangxi, northern Vietnam, northern Laos, Burma, Myanmar, Assam state of India, and also the nearby areas. Camellia sinensis variation assamica also came because of Assam, because firstly this tree was found in India. Later, tea plant was spread by humans all around China and other neighbor countries, and now tea plant grows in many countries. But if we talk about wild tea bushes, we can really talk about the areas where tea grows at least 100 and more years. So mostly it's mainland China, Taiwan, Vietnam, Laos, Burma, Thailand, and the far northeast India. Historically, people from very beginning created something from tea. It was not necessarily tea as we know now. They took the leaves and find out that this gives you some energy, and they just start making salads or some other food. And even till now in Cambodia, in Thailand, especially northern Thailand, there exists a culture of making fermented leaves. Like in Thailand, it's called, for example, miang. Later, it slowly developed into making very rough, something like shenpur, raw tea. Mostly this tradition are related to local minorities, like it can be Yi, Hani, Va, Dai, and some other minorities of southern Yunnan, which now lives in southern Yunnan of China, but also the same minorities like Yao minorities in Vietnam, Klahu or Red Lahu also in Thailand, and Lao minority in Thailand, and also Lao people in Laos, actually. Many tribes, up to 50 different tribes, which live in all this area, and they consume tea for long. In the centuries, there hasn't been any big changes in the processing of this tea. And now we know many regions where mostly you can find still very old trees, and you can produce something from these trees. And actually, this is one of my biggest passion in tea sourcing. For me, it was all the time a challenge to find something very unique, unusual, also by taste, by origin, by processing, by many other aspects. I will tell you how to understand wild tea, and we'll break it down for you. There are many teas which called wild, but this not necessarily means that we really have a wild origin. We can say wild about the tea if it was grown in an abandoned plantation. Even like, for example, this tea, it's Yesheng, Dancong cha, Liu cha. It's a green tea from Meizhou. We also call it wild. Why? Because this plantation was abandoned for 40 years, and actually now it's a trees for more than 100 years and even older, and it's not fertilized, it's not polluted anyhow, and it's not actually trimmed. And the trees really looks wild. And this is an example of this kind of wilderness. Wild means the tea is not industrialized. It means that it have wild origin. Preferably, these teas must be not trimmed, not fertilized. They also must be old trees, 100 years and older. And now I even want to brew something, Yesheng wild tea from Fengqing, from Yunnan. This is a different cultivar. It's a Camellia thaliensis, wild type of camellia from Yunnan province. And there are also the bushes of this camellia and also the wild trees. This type of tea called Yesheng cha, wild black tea, and it's produced in Fengqing County, as I told, in Yunnan province. And originally it is mostly harvested from trees no younger than 200 years old. And they often can be grown even near the plantations, near the villages, not necessarily in the jungles. But here the main factor about this tea, for example, it's the cultivar and also the age of a tree. So for sure, if the people in this area call it Yesheng, it means the tea came from very old trees, which not necessarily located in the wild. Two examples, different areas, different principles behind the term wild. We can also go to Vietnam. This tea is one of our bestsellers, let me say, Dragon Claw, and it's buds from wild trees of Camellia crocosum. It's also a different cultivar. And this Camellia, it also have tea taste, but also very rich floral, sweet fragrances, aroma. It's absolutely amazing tea. And it's only the buds which harvested in autumn and even in winter in Vietnam. In mainland China, it's also possible to find, but very low volume. And now mostly it tea. This tea is sourced in Vietnam, and you even need to pre-order it in advance. So it's not so easy to find this tea. This tea, particularly Dragon Claw, it's harvested in a wild. So it's harvested in a jungles from a big ancient trees. So this is maybe the most wild origin from all I described before. It doesn't mean that this tea is not wild enough. It's just the local specification about the parameters relevant to the term wild itself. Dragon Claw, it's also different cultivar, and this camellia have very, very low amount of caffeine, almost nothing compared to regular tea, so you can actually, for example, drink it even in the evenings, and it has very special taste. Also, a good example about other origins. For example, this tea, it's called Pinghe, Yesheng, GABA. Here the technology also means a lot. So it's actually vacuumly fermented. So it's GABA technology implemented to this wild origin tea. This is a wild cultivars, wild trees, which was brought from the jungles of southern Fujian to a small tiny plantation just on the border of the jungles, and the bushes was brought from the jungles. So the cultivar itself, it's not cultivated. So this tea has completely different taste. It's a little bit bitter. Why? Because most of the teas actually, before they start being grown by humans, before they start being selected, they has a little bit more bitterness comparing to the regular teas. Actually, even now in Yunnan, many wild origin Shenpur or other wild teas, they are bitter. And this tea also a little bit bitter, but very strong tea, very intensive taste. And also we brought this material to the factory, which processed for us GABA tea. The tea was with a high content of GABA butyric acid. So these wild bushes, wild cultivars, which was never selected, taken from jungles, it planted just all together for more easier harvesting, because in the jungles of Pinghe, if you go in the jungle, you can see one tree, after like 500 meters other tree, and this is how we just brought it outside of the jungles. Also different example, Nanjing, Yesheng, Dancong cha. Nanjing is a county on the south of Fujian province in China. Yesheng means wild in Chinese. Dancong is actually single grown bush, just a cultivars which mostly grown in Guangdong province, but here we have them in Fujian. So the guys who actually farming pomelo and farming some fruits, they have kind of a jungle plot, and bordering this jungle plot they have old garden of Dancong trees, and no one know proper origin. I just asked is it was grown or it was wild, abandoned, but taste also very, very different from Dancong we have in Guangdong province, from local teas which people grow there, and from any other. Then 1 year we process maybe up to 150 kilos of fresh leaf, so we have no more than 40 kilo of this tea yearly. And for sure I book it in advance, and I took all the batches because this is very special and unusual taste, fragrance, aftertaste, everything. I really value this tea. And the last but not least example for sure is Tea Forest Project teas. This is our own project in northern Thailand, where we have jungle tea. Actually, what is it? It's old abandoned plantations which was never used for tea production, which were used for yang, which I told before, for fermented tea leaves. And later we bought this land, we built a factory in Thailand, and we have many documentaries about it on this channel, you can check it. So we are first who start producing the tea in this area. These trees also are a bit different because it was never used for actual tea production. These plots of land, they're located in the jungles, so it's inside the natural reserve. It's not agricultural land, let me say. So we go in the jungles, and there is a plantation, where is not a plantation actually. So we have the trees and the tea bushes all grown together. This is also a different type of origin. So it's something also in the jungles, but not fully wild cultivars, because it was cultivated but many years ago. And also now it's not trimmed, not fertilized, and it's wild. So when you hear the term wild tea, it can mean one of the 6 following things. Wild tea, which is a wild origin tea trees grow in the wild in the jungles. Abandoned trees, which no one grown, no one done nothing, they're just a wild origin. It can be the tea which is abandoned plantation, which is almost, we can say, wild, because no one trim it, no one fertilize it, it's just abandoned plantation with old trees. It can be also abandoned plantation, but this plantation are located inside jungles, so it means there are regular trees and tea trees grown together. So not only tea, which is what we have in Thailand tea forest project, jungle tea. Also the wild origin cultivars, which was never selected by humans but brought outside of the jungles and grown together, like this tea, which is also quite rare. I never seen this approach before in any other place. Yesheng Hongsha, wild red tea. And this is actually the example of ancient trees of Camellia thaliensis, so it's also a different cultivar, but it grown not in the jungles, not in wild areas, but maybe even nearby the agro plantations. But here the main wilderness aspect is just it's old and it's a wild cultivar, not selected by humans. And here we have also quite mystical tea, let me say, because Nanjing, Yesheng, Dancong tea, actually no one exactly know the origin of these trees itself, because farmers say that he borrowed the land like about 20 years ago and the tree was there for sure many years before. There are some trees which 300 or more years old, and it was possibly also a different cultivar, because by taste it's very special. So it's quite close to these, like wild trees grown in the jungles but very close to inhabited areas, and no one cultivate them because they're also not grown in the lines, we just randomly located near jungles. And for all of these teas I have detailed videos, because during harvesting and processing you can find the links in the description and dive more deeply into the context. Still, there are one very important factor about wild tea which unite all them together. The first, they are not fertilized, that's for sure. So it's not, doesn't mean like a low amount of fertilizers, it means zero, nothing at all. The second fact, they are never trimmed. So the tea, no one trim it. It means the bush or tree or old tree grow as it is. No one cut the branches, no one make any shape of it, nothing. And the third very important factor, the soil is not agricultural soil. So it's always located in the jungles. So the soil actually isn't as exhausted because of the farming. Very important fact, as soon as we have trees no younger than 100 years old, it means the root system is much richer, sometimes 10 times or even 20 times bigger root system compared to younger 5 or 10 years old bush. It means it took much more nutrition from the soil and it boosts the plant and give it a lot of value. So we have all the minerals, all the healthy compounds in much bigger volume. These all four parameters unite all the wild origin teas together. Actually, I'm planning to invest a lot of my time and energy to finding more of such teas in following years, because I think it's one of the most special teas, not only because they are clean, not only because they are not fertilized, mostly old trees, but also because of absolutely fantastic taste. After centuries of selecting and cultivation of the tea plant, people developed very mild and soft taste, very easy to understand taste of the tea plants. So the wild tea, it has much richer taste, at least 15 up to 20 infusions using traditional gonfu method, or if you use a regular brewing, it gives very smooth and rich taste. And actually with regular brewing you need just a much smaller amount of the tea to have very intensive and very deep complex flavor. Factor number one is the complexity of the taste. You can find this and that, like apricots, peach, flower, whatever, like honey, some other aftertaste from flowers or whatever taste you can have. It's very wide range of all the flavors which you can find in the wild tea. And this is why for me it's number one priority to increase amount of such tea in our own assortment, and also to tell you more about these teas. I do believe that this is one of the best we can find. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and have a good day. Please subscribe to this channel, put a like or dislike, or please write a comment what you want to find out in our series of ABC of tea, because I want to make more of my experience shared with you. And if you're interested in any of these particular teas I just described, the links will be also in the description. Thank you very much.